Well, in the last few days, we've been talking a lot about vote buying. It is an epidemic. But what's the cure? Let's go through it. My guests are joining me for a conversation. The laws on this are pretty obvious, and I don't want to bore you with it, but it is an offense for anybody to attempt to induce you as a voter to get your vote. The law is very, very clear on it. You cannot give money. You cannot even propose to give the person some form of benefit just to get the person to vote for you. So why is it that it is so pervasive? What's happening to the law? Nobody's enforcing it? It's a question that I'll get my guests to try and answer. But we also know that it is clearly one that the Electoral Commission officers themselves are aware of. And why am I bringing that up when it comes to Electoral Commission? Because of what we saw with Kingsley Nyako in just ended by-elections in Ejiso. What really is the case there? And there are a lot of people who have said that, so what did he really do wrong? Considering his explanation that he had gone there to give them food, and he asked them if they were hungry, and the Electoral Commission officers replied that indeed they are not eating, and so he dropped the envelope on that table for those two EC officers, including the presiding officer, to use for food. So what really is wrong with that? We'll get some education on that particular subject. But that is the Ejiso by-election scenario. That isn't all. We've been cataloging just a host of them, many of them that the police or the OSP have shown interest in looking at. Both parties have been accusing each other, by the way. Both the NDC and the NPP have all accused each other of vote buying in one election or the other. Civil society organizations like Kodero and CDD have also done same, demanded investigations into a few of these allegations that we have seen over the period. Some of them had come with some hard evidence beyond the allegations. We saw, for example, in the primaries, in one particular constituency here in Accra, during the orphan constituencies, in Ablekuma Central, for example, our cameras picked up many of these delegates in the MPP who had been given cash, and they were not even afraid of showing the cash to us. They showed us the envelopes, fat envelopes, and told us that they were given to them by a particular aspirant, a particular candidate in that particular process who spoke to us and also said, yeah, why not? In fact, that candidate had his image and name printed on the envelope, and he shared it. In that case, we saw that the OSP had declared some of these individuals, some of these delegates wanted, those who confessed to us, declared them wanted. Nobody knows what has happened to that particular case indeed, and that is clearly a conversation we must have. Isn't that the reason why the vote buying has become an epidemic? And we are approaching an elections, and if we don't have this conversation now, when else can we have it? The cases and instances abound on both sides of the political divide. In the NDC, I'm pretty sure you remember that there was a primary in which one particular candidate was seen on top of a vehicle just throwing cash for delegates and anybody who cared to run for it to scramble for the money. He did it in the open. We captured it with our video, with our cameras, and the OSP showed interest in that too. What happened to that case also? Again, is a question that we must ask tonight. There have been zero convictions as far as this particular matter is concerned. If it is a pandemic, how come we haven't seen a conviction? The evidence is so overwhelming. In fact, there's one case in the elections of district chief executives that this individual who was hoping that the assembly members who elect him had given bribe, and he was seen himself chasing the assembly members, asking them to return the money that he gave them, expecting that they will vote for him. The OSP got involved because the man himself was seen on the video demanding that the assemblyman give him back his money. So he had bribed them, expecting that they would vote for him. That is a public election, is it not? So how come we have zero convictions if the evidence is so obvious, as we've all seen on our televisions here on your election headquarters? We'll look at that. We don't then wonder, do we, when we hear CDD tell us that, for example, it's costing us 100 million to run a presidential campaign and 4 million CDs just to run a parliamentary campaign. And I'm telling you that that is significantly understated, because this is far more than that. The MPs themselves, when they go to parliament, tell you that it is really exhausting. They would have completely emptied the bank. And no wonder we have corruption, which is a big part of our body politic. It all comes from here. If you fix this problem and you make campaign financing more transparent and you reduce the cost and the burden on those who are seeking to lead you, that will also reduce the chances that they will be doing business deals with people who simply want them, once they're in power, to give them their pound of flesh, which invariably will mean you, the taxpayer, will be paying. So you have to trace this all back to what we are talking about. This epidemic needs to be dealt with. Hopefully, my guest tonight, we can hear some radical solutions on this particular matter. If you are not fatigued by it already, I don't know what else you should be by now. You should be fatigued, but not fatigued about the solutions, fatigued about just hearing that nothing is done about it over the years. We just talk about it every election and we go to bed. I have guests who join me for a conversation, politicians, civil society folks, and lawyers. Hopefully, we can explore this in a way that we can have some clarity on this. Stay with me. After this, we'll get into the conversation. And thanks for staying with us here on PM Express. It is always brought to you by Syntex Tanks. It is strong, it is tough. Alumobita has experienced greatness in every moment. Ghana AIDS Commission as well. Pepsodent, every smile matters. And if you're looking for a tank to store water, you only have to look at Syntex Tanks, because it's the first to introduce a double-layer tank, and now you can have as many layers as you want. Syntex Tanks are the first to introduce a white inner layer tanks in Ghana. They are nationwide. They also have a 7 years warranty. That you can also call on anytime. Call them 0244-335-168 or shop online at syntexgh.com. You're stronger, you're tough. What about Pepsodent tonight? Before you sleep, you need to brush your teeth, and because they have fluoride and microcalcium ingredients, sealing tiny and invisible holes in your teeth. This prevents the cavities and keeps your teeth strong and mouth healthy. And they come in different packs so that your pocket can afford one. 875G all the way down to 12G sachets. And that's Pepsodent. Every smile matters. Joining me for a conversation tonight on this very important subject, something that we've been talking about for a very, very long time, is Professor Kwesi Jonah. Is a senior research fellow at the Institute for Democratic Governance, IDEC. Joins us right now via Zoom. Mr. Nusuf Hussaini is the former chairman of the Constitutional Legal Affairs Committee, a lawyer himself, a politician. I don't know whether he still counts himself one. At least he's a former member of parliament. And knows a thing or two about campaigning for re-election or within the party itself during primaries and what really happens there. Paul Mensah Brampa is a programs manager at the CDD, the Center for Democratic Development Ghana. And Mary Ada, of course, is executive director of the Ghana Integrity Initiative. They've been dealing with this subject and talking about it for quite some time. I'm delighted to say that we'll also be talking to Dr. Siribo Kweku. He is the Director of Electoral Services of the Electoral Commission. Remember that tomorrow is the commencement of the limited voter registration exercise. Even there, we've seen politicians attempting to bash minors sometimes to go and vote, inducing them to do so in the process. The Electoral Commission held a press conference today saying that they'll have the police on standby to arrest people. So this problem is everywhere. It's become an epidemic. And I want to really get to that and start with Mr. Hussaini, who's with me in the studio. He is the only politician among us. And Mr. Hussaini, I don't even want to talk about the problem because we've talked about it for so long now. I've heard you speak about this quite forcefully. Myself and yourself have been on the committee with CDD trying to draw up proposals to amend the laws to sharpen our campaign financing legislation. But first give me a sense of why we have failed woefully to even enforce the laws that I mentioned at the beginning about vote buying.
Thank you, Evans. And I wear two hats here. Like we said, I am a politician. I've been in politics for a very long time. I'm still in politics, except that I have moved away from competitive legislative elections. So I don't think that I want to go back to parliament. But I'm still very active in politics. I think that every individual who is a political animal ought to be concerned with the way your country is being run and what you can do to help in moving the process of development of your country forward. And this business I am in. I'm also in the business of looking at our laws. And you've mentioned the CDD, and I was privileged to have been contacted by CDD to try to see how we can fashion out legislation to deal with this canker. Now, it's a canker because we ourselves have erected an entry barrier for people who otherwise will want to contribute to the development of this country, but who cannot get into the fray because of the monetization of the process.
So this is financial barrier.
Financial barrier. You know, there are legal barriers which deals with age, non-conviction for an offense involving death, bankruptcy and others, conviction for dishonest and all those things. Now, but we as a people have erected another barrier, which is a financial barrier. Now, everybody who wants to contest an election is thinking of how to raise money to do that. And the amounts of money that are being spent on elections, both at the parliamentary primaries and parliamentary elections, presidential primaries and presidential elections, call for serious concern and a regulation of the conduct of politicians to ensure that we deal with the problem of monetization to potential money laundering, which is very rife on the political scene, corruption of the voter and the process, and I think that until we are able to do that, our attempt as a people to fight corruption would not be achieved, would be a fiasco. Now, why we have not been able to do that? Just 2 days ago, we saw a member of parliament exhibit a conduct which appears to me to infringe provisions of Act 1034, which is the amendment to the Criminal and Other Offences Act 29. Now, you hear people say that, well, he gave them lunch. He gave them lunch. And it's our culture. You don't go to the polling station and when people have not eaten and you can provide, why don't you provide? Again, so you see the people trying to justify corruptible behavior on the basis of our culture.
But the law is very clear.
Yeah,
so where are the law enforcement institutions on this? Even if it's a culture, but the law is a law.
Well, it's not even our culture. Our culture doesn't suggest that a busybody, if a busybody at an event, you provide lunch for the people who are there to participate in the event. Our culture doesn't suggest that. Our culture doesn't suggest that if you are equally circumstanced, you assume a responsibility over those who are less circumstanced. I mean, in this particular case, both the member of parliament and the temporary staff, or the staff of the ECG, however so described, are public servants. So why will one public servant assume a responsibility to feed another public servant when he is not, engaged in charitable work? And so, so you see people talk about that, and then you hear people justify corruptible behavior on the basis of the fact that delegates to a primary are coming from far away places, and so they have to ferry them, transport them to the voting centers to be able to cast their votes. Now, you must understand that it is not only one person or candidate in a parliamentary election. If it is one candidate, the corruption and the inducement of delegates is very minimal because there is no competition.
Yeah.
But when there are many candidates, you see the delegates taken from all the candidates, and there's the race to the bottom. Who would be more corrupt in influencing and inducing the delegates to be able to cast their votes for him? And that is very problematic for our democratic experiment. It means that money determines, and not the qualification, merit, or competence of the person.
Yeah, and that is the problem, I guess, that drives a lot of people crazy.
Crazy, yeah.
Because you see, what you've described is, we know the problem. In the past, it was done in the quiet, in darkness, we speculated. But over the last 1 or 2 years, it's been done in the open. You were with me on set when one candidate was throwing
the money in the air.
And then another case, MPP, the delegates were taking the money, were holding the envelopes and showing to us. In fact, it was so daring on the part of the candidate that he's actually written the money, his image and name on the envelope.
Yeah, so that the delegates don't forget that he
gave them the money. I mean, let me bring in Mr. Kusi Jonah. Mr. Jonah.
But even before Mr. Jonah comes in, you see why the matter was in the dark and now in the open? It's because of lack of accountability. Now, lack of accountability breeds impunity. Because we are not holding those who are breaking the laws accountable, responsible. That is why the people have been emboldened to bring their conduct into the open.
You're so right. It's the impunity now that is
and
Mr. Abrampel, you work with the CDD and Kodeo. You go around the country. You monitor the elections. I want to pick up from that impunity question, right? It's not come to the open. We've seen the evidence on live television. And nothing is happening. Are you as frustrated as myself talking about this subject tonight that we haven't seen any action when the laws are very, very clear?
Good evening, Evans, and let me say very good evening to Honorable Hussaini and our listeners. Yes, I like how Honorable ended, and that has been the frustration. Some of us who try to do work to bring the canker into limelight, so people will see clearly with the evidence as to what is actually happening on the ground, so that as a country and as a people who fight to stop corruption will take it up. But since we started monitoring some of these things and got the realization that it's actually becoming a canker, as Honorable has said, we actually did a survey, the cost of politics survey in 2014-2015. We did actually publicize it, where we interviewed both sitting and former members of parliament, some of them actually expressing frustration and willingness to support any cause that will come up to stop it. But what we also realized was that it's not one-man show. I'm going to contest with my fellow contestants. If I voluntarily say that this election, I'll not even buy water, why I don't know the other party also going to action he's going to do, then it becomes something that because I am not aware of the plans for my opponents, let's all be in the fray and do what we have to do. As of 2014, we calculated the cost of politics, how much a candidate will need to go through a primaries, winning and to contest in the constituency to be a minimum of $85,000. That was 2014-2015. If you take dollar rate today to be 13.5, you're talking about over 1 million Ghana cedis for a contest in parliamentary elections. So this is just by the way. We did with Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition, Ghana Integrity Initiative, Star Ghana. We had videos, we had pictures, as we were saying, some of them dishing out money. Some of them you saw a vehicle going and they would throw matchbox. You may think it's matches fingers in the box. You take it and you see 200 Ghana notes, 100 Ghana notes in the matchbox. So this is something that has gone on over and over again. You'll be in the office, somebody will call you, my opponent is distributing television sets, my opponent is sharing fridges, my opponent is sharing that. When you ask the same fellow who called you to do a complaint so that you can all, as civil society, add your voice so that you go through the legal process, the fellow will not even lodge the complaint, let alone you adding your voice to it to see that actions are taken. So this is the situation that I've gotten ourselves into.
I need to ask you then. I mean, so ordinary citizens aren't willing to report it. Should we just forget about talking about this subject and just admit that it is just part of our democracy? Because nothing is happening. I'm tired of talking about this. Only repeating previous instances and not seeing an action. Zero prosecution. Zero convictions on this subject.
If you get tired, then means you are saying that let's all allow it to happen, let it go on.
But that's what we are doing. We are allowing it to happen. We see it on our television. We talk about it. Nothing happens. So just accept it. Normalize it.
I believe as anti-corruption crusaders, we need to now sit down and fashion out a strategy as to how best we can tackle this. I was happy when this came about. We started making noise. I mean, the Josoba election video. Then you heard the OSP has come in. You heard the police has now invited the honorable member who gave out the envelope. As honorable said, people were arguing that is it bad for somebody to give 7 officers money for lunch. You ask yourself, if this incident had happened at a very competitive polling center where all the political parties have their agents, and they saw one party member giving money to electoral officers, you could imagine what would happen in that polling station. These are some of the things that happen, make people pull guns, pull pistols, and we have documented evidence of some of these things from the previous elections. So we shouldn't just be attaching or bringing issue of culture and Ghana's habits of benevolence, that people give something to people who are serving. I overheard an MP saying that even police people who man our roads, sometimes you get there and realize they are tired. You give them money to go and buy water. So if somebody is manning your polling center and you give him money to go and buy, like, our MP was just arguing that way. And lawyers will come in here. In corruption, in bribery, timing is of essence. What particular time that is given, and what was the action being taken at the time the money was given is as much important. It's not a quantum. It's not whether it's 1 cedi or 2 cedi. Of course, something did change hands at a time that we're expecting resource. So let's put the thing in context in the arguments that we make. So we believe we've not done enough, as you've said, but I think it's time we bring ourselves together as media, as civil society, as anti-corruption crusaders, fashion our strategy, put more pressure in the system so that we are able to see.
And on that point you just made, let me pull that to Mary Ada. I mean, she's been in the anti-corruption fight for a long time. I mean, Mary, should we accept as civil society and media as part of the civil society that we have failed, and the reason why the agencies of state have just simply gone to bed and this is festering? Should we just take the responsibility and blame for this? That we haven't been aggressive enough on this subject?
No. Good evening to you and good evening to the other guests on the show, and good evening to the viewers of your platform. I say no, a big no. If you would recount what happened in the past, you would realize that the people of Ghana did not even understand and appreciate what corruption was in the first place. And it's a matter of the way we appreciate the gifts and the way we give gifts as a people. And so in most of those instances in the early elections, you would see people giving matches and other stuff. We did not count for much when it comes to the value of the gifts. But however, as we have progressed and as people have seen that people come into these political spaces just to acquire wealth and enrich themselves and their cronies, then people have also become very intelligent and innovative in their asking. And so you shouldn't be surprised to see that they are asking for more and they are getting more. But then it is also because we have spoken about this issue extensively. That is why today people tell you there is this person buying this person's votes. And then others will tell you, in fact, we are even ready to sell our votes if you are willing to buy it.
Yeah, but Mary, if you consider,
they may not vote for
Mary,
you.
if you consider that the word that Sefuseni used, impunity, now from the campaign that we're running, now they're not even afraid to do it in the open. They're doing it in the open, advertising the buying of the votes. Doesn't that show that if we are doing anything at all, it hasn't said that it hasn't deterred anybody. It has only emboldened people.
So it deters them. Some of them are really. You realize the gentleman who did this last week has come back to apologize in a way.
But nothing's going to happen to him.
Unfortunately, let me say quickly that one of the things that our politicians and particularly our legislators have done is that they have not helped us in ensuring that we have a robust regime that criminalizes and sanctions punitively some of these behaviors. And so people are able to get away with unacceptable behavior because they know the regime is weak. The special prosecutor would call you all right, but then at the end of the day, the person says, oh, I was just giving TNT. And if you remember the recent party primaries which happened, in fact, candidates actually went into agreement with the parties to do this, legitimizing the issue of vote buying. And that is true if you put it in that context. Very unacceptable behavior, but our legislators, because they benefit from these weaknesses, do not want to enhance our legislation to ensure that we have a punitive regime. Alaji Musa is there, he will tell you. They get away with it because the laws are weak. We have the laws, yes, we continue to say so, but these laws are not robust enough to fight the advocacy we are conducting. And we continue to say that our definition of bribery, they say do not bribe an electoral officer. The criminal code says so. So you are not supposed to bribe a juror, and you are not supposed to, the juror is also not supposed to be receiving. However, when it comes to us executing these things, people get away with all kinds of unacceptable behaviors because they have found ways of justifying them. But that does not mean that we should relent. It is because we have spoken to the issue. That is why today, even you and I would have people call you to say that authoritatively, this man is buying votes. And then sometimes they can take those monies and also vote against those people. It is not, we have gone from people swearing and taking oaths to taking the money and still not voting for them. And so they punish them for doing the right thing, the wrong things. So let's see how it goes going forward, because this advocacy, and you mentioned earlier, Alhaji Yunusa has also talked about his being part of the regime that is trying to get a legislation in place to ensure that we curb this. Other countries have them. In the French countries, you see that their legislations and the regimes are robust enough, so you don't see some of these actions getting on. And our politicians have become so bold, they are emboldened. They are doing this with impunity because they know they would have the support of their cronies. And we have managed as well to infiltrate the ranks of the populace. And so many people are seeing it from a partisan perspective. For that matter, if it is blue, there is nothing wrong with it. If I look at, or if I have sympathies for blue, if it is red or green, so far as the person is doing it and it's my party person, I am not going to do anything. And leadership as well sits aloof to allow such behavior
to happen. And thankfully, just been joined now by Chrissy Jonah. Mr. Jonah, so is it a case of weak legislation or weak enforcement, or both?
Weak legislation, no, weak enforcement.
Yes, or both.
We need to understand this phenomenon very, very well, maybe in economic terms. What happens when people buy and sell votes? Simple. A few candidates, about 3, 4, 5 candidates, very few, are competing for the vote of a number of delegates. Maybe if it is just a parliamentary primary, anything from 1,500 to 4,500 or maybe 5,000 delegates. Now, you are 3 or 4 candidates. The only way, from the perspective of these candidates, to be able to beat the other candidates is to offer something. So it's a demand and a supply side. Mm-hmm. On the supply side are the few candidates who will be supplying the cash. On the demand side are the very many delegates who hold the vote and are spread to part with it. Now, so for us, each of the candidates, those on the supply side, are finding ways of minimizing the competition between them in order to be on top of the competition. The other people on the demand side are also trying to sell their vote to the highest bidder. Now, we have always looked at these in very legalistic terms. Why don't you catch them and put them into jail? And it's not going to happen anytime soon. To be honest with you, if you have 4,000 or 5,000 delegates, each of them taking money from a few candidates, and both the seller and the buyer are guilty of an offense, are you going to throw 4,000, 5,000 delegates who are taking 300, 400, each of them taking 300, 400 from each candidate? Yeah. You have to take another second hard look at this phenomenon.
So what do we do then? And that was my question earlier. Should we just forget about this?
That's what you're coming to. Mm. If it was possible to throw all of them into jail, the phenomenon would probably, Salon will be full, everywhere will be full, and there'll be nowhere to take them. This is what you do. Those of us in civil society, together with the political parties, we cannot do this without the support and the cooperation of the political party. Because we keep looking at it in legalistic terms, to throw them into jail, arrest them, we are not enforcing. No. Let us, as civil society and political parties, all accept that the buying and selling of votes undermines democracy in a very fundamental way. Therefore, incorporate it into a code of conduct for the candidate. Let us all work to show the candidates that in a competitive election, we are giving the voters the opportunity to select the very best candidate for the position.
Prof, I can actually tell you that in the last elections, both NDC and MPP had it as part of their code for the candidates in the primary. Okay. They actually signed that they will not give it any money.
I am now talking about cooperation between the civil society organizations and the political parties to do this job together. Mm. Cooperation between the political parties and those of us in civil society to do this job together. It is wrong to buy votes. You turn the election into an auction, giving the seat to the highest bidder. It is not right. It kills our democracy. So let us work together, civil society and political parties, work together, both on the candidates and the delegates, to ensure that this problem, even if it is not totally eliminated, it is minimized. It is minimized.
Isn't there part of what you're saying that actually also admits that this is an impossible task to try and eradicate? Even minimizing it is impossible, is it not? Because gradually over the years, it's becoming worse. It's not getting better.
No.
I know I'm sounding like a skeptic, but I don't see any way out here. The law isn't working. There's no enforcement. Political parties, I assure you, I'm not interested in, they'll pay lip service to it, but enforcement, nothing happens. The OSP declared people wanted. The MPP did very little to offer them up. Even if they've been caught, nobody knows. Nobody has updated us about this.
Yeah, but I am not talking about the OSP now. I am talking about a genuine cooperation between the political parties and civil society organizations. You sit down together to see how best you can tackle this problem. And I think that if civil society and political parties work on both the candidates as well as the delegates, you get somewhere.
Enusa, is there any radical proposition you can make tonight that can make a difference in this conversation?
Obviously, yes, what is happening undermines our democracy. It's an auction of our democracy to the highest bidder. It cannot be tolerated. It's unacceptable. They obviously could be cooperation, but they ought to be a radical departure from the way we have approached things over the years. I think that the way to go about it is to target the candidates and not the delegates. I mean, the delegates, you cannot take 4,000 or 20,000 or 100,000 delegates to jail. But you can monitor the 275 members of parliament. You can also monitor the presidential candidates because they spend. I mean, if you look at the pull factors, the candidates are actually the fulcrum on which the corruption is built, and not the delegates. And so, in any legislation, any attempt to control the canker must target those people. And countries have done that. Now, you have to look at two key or three key things in a legislation. Transparency, that whatever the candidate is doing during the campaign period, and so a campaign period must be determined, how monies can be spent, and somebody must be there monitoring what the candidate, whether it's a parliamentary candidate or a presidential candidate, is doing, how much that presidential candidate is spending.
And how much you can spend.
And how, I'm coming to that.
Okay.
Then two, there must be disclosures.
Okay.
Who is contributing to the campaign fund of the candidate? I mean, is he lodging the money in the bank? Is he making the accounts of, I mean, his campaign funds, or the accounts of his campaign funds or his bank accounts available for scrutiny? I mean, the legislation must target that. That you cannot just receive money from a donor and then spend the money. You must first of all channel the money through, a receptacle, and then you will have a body established to track how you spend the money. And thirdly, if you spend more, then you must have a Sarkozy. You know what happened in France?
Yeah.
So you are supposed to spend money. I mean, so that's where you come in, the cap. So there's a cap. You can't spend more than 100,000 Ghana cedis in an election. If you spend more, then you have to answer where the more is coming from. That is the accountability. So, you know, in Trump, he was also supposed to spend the campaign funds. What did he do? He falsified company documents to admit of the campaign funds in order to divert it. And so there must be laws. And when you are caught, you must be punished. The sanctions are there. You must be punished. And there must be periodic reporting on how you utilize those monies. Periodic. And that accounts must be available for anybody. I mean, we are lucky to have the Right to Information Act. Anybody. And so if a candidate spends more than, one, he is allowed to spend. Two, he is not reported the expenditure. Three, he has, hidden the expenditure. That clearly will be, that third part will be money laundering. You are laundering it. You're hiding the source of the expenditure. And there are consequences for that. So we must move away from targeting delegates to targeting the candidates. They're just few. When you do that, you should be able to rein in this canker.
You know, because you really started this, what you're saying, actually, let me ask Abrampa. Abrampa, can you give us an update on that project? Where are we in getting that? Because the parties were at the table. I mean, Inusa and myself were there. NDC was represented at a very high level. MPP too, and there are smaller political parties. In fact, Macmillan was part of that committee as well. I mean, do you have an update on where that is?
Yes, I think it's stalled a bit, but for what I discussed with Kojo and the Corruption Watch, they are trying to reactivate some of these things, and in fact, all branches of issues that they think can fuel corruption. So it's going to feed into the Corruption Watch project, I believe, of which your organization is part of. Yeah. So it's going to be reactivated, and they have some questions in this year's questionnaire that we are giving to the long-term observers and to observe. So it will be reactivated, and we will push it further. There will be strategic partnership and also meetings with institutions such as the OSP's office and other offices that we think we can share documents, evidence with for policy uptake and also for actions. So I think it's going to be reactivated, and some of you who are already on the committee will be invited.
I mean, Mary, so he's mentioned the OSP. We know that the police got involved with the Kingsley Nyako case also. The OSP who is interested there. If I say to you, Mary, that I can bet you that 6 months to a year down the line, nothing would have happened, although we saw the video with our naked eyes last week, would you doubt me?
Certainly, I would not doubt you, because we are talking from experience. We have seen when it is the smaller boys or girls, we see the swiftness of the action, and we see also the court processes take time, and the lawyers would say the wheels of justice grind slowly. You remember the MCE nominee for the Bekwai.
Exactly.
He is still in court, and the OSP gives updates on that case as well. I'm not too sure how that is going to pan out, but at least that has been taken to court. And I believe that the impunity with which this professor behaved, that should be another example of us seeing him being taken to court, because there is evidence. This is very succinct, clear, plain sight. There was an envelope. Whatever that envelope contained should be made known.
No, he's admitted. He's admitted that it was money. He was giving it because
exactly. So now the OSP who is investigating should then be telling us that this is money, and the intention behind trying to give money to an electoral officer during an active electioneering process. This is when people are voting. He would then have to explain that. And as it happened to the MCE nominee for the Bekwai, I believe that should also happen to this MP. There is no way we should allow such flagrant abuses of power and also impunity to continue to thrive in Ghana. If we want our democracy to progress, then such behaviors which are so... In fact, this is a professor and a teacher who has taught in the university before, who should know better than he has acted. And so for this, I believe the issue to deal with him should be taken even more further than it happened to the MCE nominee for the Bekwai. But then also, if you remember, there were instances where the OSP has spoken to the fact that people are usually not ready to come and support in the investigations. If you remember, during the primaries, people would come out and say, if you don't bring money, we will not vote. But then it doesn't constitute the crux of the matter. You don't have enough information to go by. So some of these, they bring them, and we are let down in a way because people are not able to follow up, and that is sad. So for me, I believe that we shouldn't allow this to go at all. And let me say that I cannot say I have full confidence that this would be going any way that is contrary to what has happened in the past with others. But this is a clear case that we need to show that if we want to fight corruption, these are some of the examples. And we are told that nobody is pulling any strings from behind. So if nobody is pulling any strings from behind, then this is a very fine case to show that nobody is pulling any strings from behind.
Mr. Jonah, so as we begin to wrap up, you've suggested that it is a partnership between the civil society organizations and the political parties that can move the needle. I mean, the suggestion is that that will leave the matter in the hands of individuals who only have moral suasion, and that what you really need is, one, change the law and ensure that the agencies that enforce them are enforcing them, and you put pressure when they don't, right? I don't know if that is a position that you probably support.
No, I do support. Law enforcement should continue. What I am saying is that so far, you have not been very, very effective. And so I agree with a lot of the things that have been said there. In fact, the CDD project on campaign financing and party financing, you are part of it. I have participated in it fully. But there's a slight difference between what we are talking about, the buying and selling of votes, and campaign or party financing. There's a relationship. Both of them, if we are able to control them, will improve our democracy. But there's a slight relationship. The buying and selling of votes and the campaign financing slightly different. But I'm not saying we should stop law enforcement completely. I am saying that let us work on the supply side. As those who give out the money, they are fewer, we can work on them, and to the extent that some of the people who receive the money are also party members, we can work on them. So I am not saying that let us do this to the exclusion of law enforcement and so on and so forth. That's not what the point I am making. If this is how you understood me, wrong.
Okay. And in addition to that, though, considering that we have so many cases that we haven't seen any conclusion to, what would you want to see, though, at the level of law enforcement, at the level of political will, etc.?
The cases that they are working on, they should bring it to a successful conclusion as soon as possible. Let us know that people who were caught in the act are punished.
Okay. I mean, Mr. Fuseni, that is, many will say, easier said than done, right? Because we've seen that the agencies either don't seem interested or the courts itself don't attach too much, currency and seriousness to the cases when they are before them, and so nothing gets done. And so the impunity breeds. You have an elections approaching, and it is very obvious that this is going to happen again. Even tomorrow when the voter registration exercise starts, EC is complaining already today that they're expecting people to be busing minors to the police station, haven't induced them to go and register to vote.
Yes, so with the greatest respect to Mr. Kosi Jonah, there is a direct relationship between campaign financing and vote buying. Now, in our particular case, because we don't have a ceiling, a cap on how much a political party can raise and how much it can spend, much of the money goes into vote buying. Yeah. And so you are able to deal with campaign financing. I mean, how is a political party, how a candidate raises his money, then you must be able to deal with vote buying. And so we must take the issues together, campaign financing and vote buying. We must take them together. There are already laws that deal with vote buying treated. In fact, even in those days of Okurba, they were treated. It found its way into the political parties law. Recently, the Act 29, as amended, also deals decisively. And the sanctions under 1034 are so punitive and deterrent. I mean, if somebody who corrupts the process during public elections, that person goes to jail for between 5 years, at most 10 years. And if convicted, that is, and that fellow will not be qualified, eligible to hold public office. If this is not deterrent, I don't know what can be deterrent. Now, if a person is convicted for influencing a public officer in the performance of his duties, that is, any public officer in the performance of his duties, including during elections, that fellow goes to jail between 10 and 25 years. Yes, so there are laws. The enforcement of those laws and the fact that we seem to tolerate the activity of vote buying and turn a blind eye to what is happening. We all pretend not to see. But when we pretend, we suffer our democracy. Because the monies that are being distributed around are public resources. I say public resources because those monies do not find their way to the GRA, that is Ghana Revenue Authority, for the purposes of tax payments. So those monies are monies that are funneled to the political parties to use in campaigning. Yeah. And this is detrimental to the development of the country. I mean, can you imagine the amount of money that entered North or that entered Ejisu? What that money could have done?
Yeah. What's your, and just a very quick question to everybody. What's your level of confidence that anything will change?
Anything will change because...
What's your level of confidence?
I'm so confident
on a
that
scale of
things
zero,
will change.
you confident?
Yes, because we can't allow this to continue.
Okay. Mary, what's your level of confidence that anything will change?
In the current state of affairs, I don't see much. As Honorable has indicated, if you look at our political party act, there are a lot of the regimes he talked about stated clearly in there. But then we still have this. So until such a time that as a people we decide that we would go the way that doesn't reflect extreme, in fact, sometimes it's crazy, extreme partisanship, we will not be making any impact. But then we have hope that we would get there.
Okay.
And we have hope that the people of Ghana, who are increasingly becoming...
We'll get there in our lifetimes? In your and my lifetime?
Oh, yes, we would see some reduction in these levels, but not elimination.
Okay.
In our lifetime, we certainly would see it.
Okay, Mary, thank you.
Because if you remember countries like the Tunisians and others, sometimes there are issues that come up, and then we let the political class know that the people cannot be taken for granted all of the times.
Okay. I'm grateful, Mary. Thank you very much. Mr. Brampa also, and Kwesi Jonah, and Mr. Fusini as always. Enjoy the rest of your evening.